Numbers are thrown out all the time. Are they proof of some truth or just fluff that bluffs us? These statistics, they need some serious looking into. And that's what I'll do. I'm Brendan Fernandez. We find out the story behind the statistics. Because some numbers are just worth figuring out. When the MRT first opened, I was only 8. There was only one line, the North-South line. Now, standing here today, it's hard to imagine that Singapore's MRT only came into existence 25 years ago. Back then, in 1987, the average number of people taking the train per day was 200,000. Sound like a lot? Well, today, I'm literally one of millions taking the train. Now, it's over 2 million per day. 2 million! That's more than the entire population of a small Persian Gulf state. People in Singapore took a grand total of 654.4 million rides in 2012, making us the 15th busiest metro in the world. Michael Lee, a professor of transport economics at Singapore's Nanyang Technological University. He's made a living out of studying public transport systems across the world.
There was no demand for transport if we don't have a purpose. So therefore, in economic terms, transport demand is a derived demand. The demand for transport, for commuting, does not grow in the linear format according to population. So the population grows 10%. The demand needs for transport or commuting, it might go 15%.
How does that happen? Why does...
Because of network effect. People are socially connected, different activities there. You know, there are more other type of social trips going on there. So in a network environment, the number of trips generated usually is grow in a non-linear format.
I see.
So as a result of that, big cities get easily congested.
Okay.
Than a small city.
Right.
Because there's more trips going on there.
Sure, we could say that more people are taking the train now because, well, there are more people than there were 25 years ago. But what if we took the number of people out of the equation? In the last 25 years, the number of daily trips per person has grown by 600% from 0.07 in 1987 to 0.42 today. That's actually higher than the daily ridership per person on the London Tube, which is at 0.39. It probably has something to do with the fact that it's just easier to get to the train these days. This is what our MRT line looks like right now. You can get from coast to coast in about 70 minutes. Now, to make that same journey 26 years ago will require more than 2 hours and at least 3 different buses, because this is what the MRT line looked like back then. The opening of the first section of the Northeast Line in November 1987 caused quite a stir. Singapore has the second oldest metro system in Southeast Asia. 400 VIPs and their plus ones boarded the first train that left Toa Payoh for Yio Chu Kang. 3 weeks later, 1 million rides had been taken. Within 3 years, this became this. The rail lines grew tenfold, from 6 kilometers to 67 kilometers. In 1991, you no longer needed cold hard cash to pay for your trips. You could pay using this. For 10 years, we only had the north-south and east-west lines. In June 2003, Singapore welcomed one of the first fully automated heavy rail lines in the world, the Northeast Line. Fast forward to 2013. This is what the MRT map looks like now. The East-West line was extended, and the Circle line was introduced. And our MRT map is set to keep growing. This year, the Land and Transport Authority announced the addition of 2 new lines and extensions to the current ones. The government will be spending 60 billion Singapore dollars on these rail extensions. I guess the people here will be thrilled.
The 2 new lines, the Cross Island Line and the Jurong Regional Line. The 50-kilometre-long Cross Island Line will run across our island from Changi in the east to Jurong Industrial Park in the west. The 20-kilometre Jurong Regional Line will link areas in Jurong and the west with the rest of Singapore. It may come in especially handy with the current plans to develop Jurong into CBD 2.0. How does the Transport Authority know where to place these stations and lines? I asked the man who gets to play with the biggest train set in Singapore, the Director of Policy and Planning of the Land Transport Authority, Jeremy Yap.
Before lines are built, what we do is we have very detailed studies of the medium and long-term travel demand. Then, through a platform of land use agencies, we try and determine the land use plans. Then we look at time savings, whether if we have a certain line running through certain corridor, how many commuters will actually have time savings in their travel to, let's say, major employment centers or the city center. So, for example, when the Thomson line is completed, commuters and residents who are staying in the Keban Baru estate will have direct access to an MRT station. Right. Whereas today, they will have to travel more than 10 minutes to access the nearest MRT station along the North-South line, and that is Ang Mo Kio Station.
If the planning authority had to plan an MRT station, the basic parameter must be population density within the service area. You might say certain station poor planned because the population are there. And some stations maybe you underestimate. And then you get really crowded.
Right.
Right.
Like Jurong East, for example.
Yeah, like Jurong East. For the case of Jurong East, we have to bear in mind that in the last decades, the population in the west areas grow more than other areas.
The new MRT lines and the extensions to the existing ones will double the length of the rail network, from 178 kilometers to 360 kilometers. But what does that mean, really? Let me show you.
Currently, our rail tracks span the length of 4 Pan-Island Expressways, or PIEs. They will soon be extending to the length of 8 of these expressways. Now, 6 in 10 people live within 10 minutes of the MRT. By 2030, it will be 8 in 10. Or at least that's the plan. So, who are these outliers? The 2 in 10 who won't be near a train station.
There's quite a comprehensive network out there, but yet there will still be corridors that will not be served and areas that will not be served. But I will say that these are typically areas with lower development quanta, meaning that they are not so populated areas.
But even if you were one of the 8 in 10 in 2030 living within 10 minutes of the MRT, could you be persuaded to give up your car in favor of the train? After the break, what is the master plan for getting people off the roads and onto the trains? Enrique Peñalosa, former mayor of Bogota, Colombia, once said something that roughly translates into, a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars. It's where the rich take public transportation. Now, this quote was tweeted and then retweeted thousands and thousands of times.
Are we there yet? In Singapore, the percentage of people choosing public transport over private stands at 63%. The Land Transport Authority's target? 70% by 2020. How? By lowering your commuting time. That might be helpful, especially when you're trying to get to work on time.
It's 8 a.m., peak hour. I'm traveling to the Land Transport Authority, or LTA. Let's see how long it'll take me by public transport. Okay, so it took me about 15 minutes to walk here. Now I'm going to get on the train.
Today, only 7 in 10 of us get from our home to our workplace in 60 minutes or less. The plan is to increase that number to 8 in 10 by 2020. Or 85% of commuters being able to reach their workplace within an hour.
So, it took me about 40 minutes to get to the Land Transport Authority. How long would the same route take me by car? Uncle, let's go to LTA.
By car, I took around 22 minutes to get here. It appears that a trip by public transport in the morning rush hour takes, on average, 1.7 times longer than by car today.
So I hear that by 2020, the plan is to have 85% of commuters be able to reach their destination during rush hour within an hour. What are the steps that we're going to take to try and get to that?
Well, basically, we need to aggressively expand our rail network because that's the backbone. So with greater reach, people will have shorter time traveling into the city centers. Beyond that, we need to refine our bus network. Not only that, but infrastructurally, whether it's walking, cycling, covered linkways to increase the catchment of our stations so that people can, in terms of the first and last mile connections, they can connect quicker, right, to the main transport nodes. That's how we want to perhaps bridge the travel time, right, and increase the percentage of people who would then make their travel within 60 minutes during peak hours.
I see.
So, we have the roadmap to the target. But as this next set of numbers will show you, we Singaporeans really love our cars. Despite the expansion of the MRT over the years since 1987, our vehicle population has not shown any signs of dwindling.
Here are the years, from 2001 until today. And here are the number of cars. Let's look at the growth of Singapore's car population over the years. The car population has grown by 35%. For every 3 motor vehicles in 2001, 1 more was added by 2011. But in that same period of time, the number of people only grew by 25%. There were a total of 606,280 cars on the road in 2011. The other thing steadily on the rise? This. More cars, more land in Singapore, naturally, more traffic lights. From 2001 to 2011, the number of traffic lights went up by a little over 20%. We now have about 2,150 traffic lights. We have about 3,250 kilometers of road, not counting expressways since you don't see traffic lights on them. So that works out to an average of 1 traffic light every 1.51 kilometers of road. Now you'd think, more traffic lights, more orderly roads. Let's have a look at the data for our speeding violations.
They've gone up by 1.5 times in the last 5 years, from more than 160,000 in 2008 to about 244,000 in 2012. Now, the Singapore Traffic Police has said that there is no relation between the number of traffic lights and speeding violations. We decided to follow the traffic police on one of their operations to catch speed demons in the act. And, well, speeding does happen whether or not there is a red light. But then again, which of us has not been guilty of accelerating just to get through an intersection before the light turns red? The roads may not be the most dangerous way to travel in Singapore. Which train line has the highest probability of breakdown? After the break.
Lately, there's been a lot of talk about trains being too crowded. Well, the numbers are only going to go up.
Last year, a total of 924 million people took the train. By 2030, this is expected to jump to this. But, as we now know all too well, the heavy load has caused some wear and tear on our mass rapid transit or MRT trains.
Here I have the years from 2009 to 2012. Now these are the years when MRT breakdowns became more common. And here are the number of breakdowns that lasted more than half an hour for every 100,000 kilometers of rail. We'll be looking at three different lines: the north, south, east, west line, the northeast line, and the circle line. Here are how the lines performed. The circle line didn't fare so well, even though it is the newest of the three. It had the highest number of breakdowns that lasted more than half an hour per 100,000 kilometers of rail. The north, south, east, west line didn't fare as badly here. But it could be because it's the longest line, 102.2 kilometers of rail. So, naturally, when we look at a breakdown per 100,000 kilometers, it actually did the best. But when we look at the total number of incidences, the north, south, east, west line had the most number of breakdowns that lasted more than half an hour. I'm sure we all remember the worst breakdown in SMRT's history in December 2011 on SMRT's oldest line. More than 127,000 commuters were affected for more than 5 hours.
The same line broke down again 2 days later, affecting over 94,000 people. The Land Transport Authority, or LTA's inspection following the two incidents found 61 rail defects and 13 trains affected.
We must put enough replenishment, invest, maintain. So I guess for any system, infrastructure in particular, if you don't maintain well, you are guaranteed to fail. The probability of failure is 100%.
In the last 5 years, Singapore's SMRT spent over $297 million on maintenance. Compare that to the investment by some of the other big metros in the world. Hong Kong, over $515 million every year. London, over $990 million between 2011 and 2012. The breakdowns of 2011 cost SMRT 2 million Singapore dollars in fines, the maximum penalty. While the fine might have put a dent in SMRT's pockets, it definitely wasn't that big a hole. According to award-winning social media organization This Big City, Singapore's MRT system is one of only 4 profitable metro corporations in the world as of 2011. That's out of a total of 135 operators worldwide. But does our ability to balance our books really make us one of the best in the world? Well, we made it to Business Insider's and CNN's list of the top 10 metros in the world in 2011 and 2013, along with Hong Kong's MTR and Tokyo's Metro. but were left out of Frommer's list of top cities for subways. So, who's got it right? Well, according to Dr. Michael Lee, neither. Not objectively, anyway. Because such lists are usually published based on commuter satisfaction. They evaluate the subways based on a commuter's experience of factors such as safety, reliability, and connectivity, making them subjective and academically insignificant.
Is there a way to globally benchmark systems objectively?
In order to compare system, we have to go to supply side, meaning that how the system use the inputs, provide the services. Just to give example, let's we compare with SMRT, SBS. They're more compatible. In order to have a proper understanding on the cost efficiency and the productivity issues, we need them open the book, get the data, the operation data, financial data, etc. And that can be confidential. You know that it's difficult to get this kind of data.
Sure.
Once we factor it in, it can be done. But the bottom line is you will involve confidential data. We have data, we should be able to come up with a result.
Right.
To date, a cross-country comparison of public transport systems based on their cost efficiency or total factor productivity has not been published. But maybe we can take heart in the fact that we do have one or two objective feathers in our hat. In 2010, SMRT took 4 Metro Rail Awards, presented by the Metro Rail Congress, held annually for the worldwide rail community. We got top honors for most energy efficient, most technologically innovative, best metro in Asia Pacific, and most improved odor.
Not bad for a metro that's only 25 years old. But Singapore's public transport system needs to up its game if it's going to lure people away from the comfort of their cars, especially as we expect further population growth. But it does seem like our MRT is on the right track.